Due to the graphic nature of the personal accounts and content discussed in this podcast, listener discretion is advised. Many episodes will include graphic personal accounts and discussions of child sexual assault, domestic violence, physical abuse, rape, sexual situations, and suicide.
Oh my child, I know you're hurt and you can't let go. It's not your fault and you don't deserve all the bad and the hurt. I know you tried so hard. I know you've done your part. It's not fair. You did your time. How much longer will you suffer in this life? But don't give up. Just hold on tight. It'll be alright.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Latter-day Survivors. I'm Christina, and I'll be hosting today's episode. I also have Kendra in the studio with me today, so you might hear her chime in as well. We're super excited for our guest today. We are interviewing Saige Kristian today. Saige is a queer ex-Mormon writer and director in Los Angeles, and she is making a short film called Girls Camp, which is about two girls who fall in love at a church camp. She also has her own story to tell and has graciously agreed to come on and share it with us. So welcome to Latter-day Survivors, Saige.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to talk to you. I know that I think you had started following us on Instagram, and as soon as I saw the title of your Instagram page, I was intrigued immediately. And by the way, if you want, for those that are listening, you can find their film's Instagram site. Their Instagram name is @girlscampfilm. Go check it out. But I also wanted to tell you, I like the logo that you have for the film, the profile picture. It's very catchy, and it caught my eye, and I was intrigued immediately. So
thank you. I wanted it to feel very like girly and campy, which is what Girls Camp always felt like to me. So it was actually our graphic designer who made it, named Amber, who knocked all the graphic design out of the park. So
oh, that's awesome. Well, she did a great job because it's catchy and it definitely caught my attention. So
awesome. I literally can't make this without the help of others and the generosity of others. We have 315 out of 20,000 right now, and we need the community to make this happen because I feel like this is an important story to tell.
Yeah.
I mean, my dream would be that I could just find one rich person that loves the idea.
Yeah. A sugar mama, a sugar daddy.
No, that would be amazing. But
yeah.
I haven't found that person yet.
Yeah.
I haven't found them either.
God damn it.
I'm looking, I just want to quit working, and it hasn't happened yet.
I know, you two have like the hardest job in the world too, so I don't know. I don't know how you get through every day.
Yeah. So I'm just going to let you kind of tell your story as you want to tell it, and I'll chime in and comment or ask questions. But yeah, we'll let you run with it.
Alrighty. Well, if we start way back in the day, I was raised Mormon from birth to about 17 or 18 years old. I don't remember exactly. But I come from a divorced family. My biological father is a piece of shit, and he was a piece of shit then. He's a piece of shit now. but he was never Mormon. My mom was always on the like outskirts of what the Mormon church wanted her to be, so she was always very like in trouble. So I never understood why she was she wasn't ostracized. Like she was, I don't know what the right word is. She was always like looked at differently than the other moms. But I just internalized church to be uh a place where there was a certain way to be, and if you weren't that certain way, then you were wrong or bad or weird. And
Mhm.
I was always different, whether it was because I was like quote unquote edgy, because my family wasn't like the nuclear family the church wants.
Mhm.
Um, but I was always different. So like I would question like things like at seminary I would like ask a lot of questions like what do you think, like tell me more about this, or like why did you say that, or like just like questioning and exploring questions. And I remember this one time this girl turned around and was like, you need to just believe. And
Uh-huh.
I was like, okay, I don't agree,
Right.
uh, but I the problem with the church was that the problem with the church and with me was that because I came from a divorced family where my biological father like rejected me, I wanted everyone to like me. I wanted everyone to think I was good, and I just wanted to be what everyone wanted me to be.
Mhm.
So when, like, for example, when that girl would say, you need to just believe, my response wasn't like, I can do whatever I want. My response was like, something is wrong with me. Why am I questioning these things?
Mhm.
And that's what the church always made me feel, is like something was wrong with me. But instead of being like, I need to leave this institution because it makes me feel bad, I was, like I said, the kind of person, the people pleaser, the insecure little girl that wanted to just make people happy and make people like me. So it was super poisonous because it just made me feel like I was um always wrong,
Yeah.
and that I was always um different.
Yeah.
When you're a kid, all you want to be is normal, quote unquote normal.
Right. Normal and accepted and included
Yeah.
in things, yeah. I actually identified with just about every single thing you said there. I also came from a divorced family, and my mom was also sort of outskirts Mormonism, like, not super totally in, and we
Yeah.
were the different family that was looked at differently, and just like you, I just wanted to be accepted, but I always knew that I was very different,
Yeah.
and, yeah, you know, people can tell you all you want, like, "Be unique," but it hurts when you're not when you feel rejected, you're not accepted into the group. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Totally. And I think the one of the like really shitty and hard things about Mormonism now that I'm like 26 and like can like look back on it with a different perspective is like the church amplified all of the things that society was already telling you. So like society was like, don't be fat, don't be um don't be like outspoken. As a girl, you want to be submissive. And the
Mhm.
church just amplified that and was like, you need to be a mother, you need to be a wife, you need to be submissive to the men and uh elders around you.
Yep.
And they also I mean obviously they were not, I wouldn't, well, okay. So like the church is obviously against people being gay.
Right.
But I think the really insidious thing about the church was that they were never blatant about it.
Right.
They were always super low key, but you just like you indoctrinate yourself. Like
Yep.
like
they teach you to gaslight and indoctrinate yourself.
Yeah. Totally. Like going back to the girl that told me just believe is like she really did believe to just believe. Like shut your thoughts down, and just be what we're telling you to be.
Well, and that's part of the being completely obedient, right? That's because the church is really big on obedience. And what you said about them not being blatant about not being accepting of gay people, it's when you were saying that, it made me think, because they would make all these rules, you can't be gay, but we love everybody, right?
Yeah.
Jesus said, love everyone. We love you. We just don't like what you do. You're welcome to come to church. Just like, don't act out on your gayness.
Yeah.
It's just all these mixed messages. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, and then they kind of come around a little bit, and they kind of pay lip service to being a little bit more accepting and a little bit more open, but the underlying rules have never changed.
No, totally.
Yeah.
They like to think they've evolved, but they haven't.
No. But they
And I
have to
don't think
say that. No, I
Yeah.
don't. Well, I don't think they can. And this is what I've been saying. If they come around and they change the rules and they change their mind about things, even if they want to call it quote unquote revelation, it's going to knock down the foundation of everything that they've built the church on. And so they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place now, because they've set themselves up this way to where they kind of can't go back. If they don't go back and they don't progress, they're going to keep losing members. People are dropping like flies. But if they do change, then it all crumbles, right? Because then it's like, well, what has this been all these years? Either way, I think they're in hot water when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a part of me that is very happy that people are leaving in these big droves of numbers. I think people are tired of it, and tired of feeling bad and tired of feeling shamed. There was nothing but shame from the church.
Yep. Shame and fear.
Shame and fear. Yep.
Yeah, that's what it all boiled down to.
I think it's ridiculous because everything I felt shame about was things that were normal.
Right.
I totally felt shame over starting to masturbate. I felt like I was the dirtiest, most evil little gremlin because and that's the other thing is like that talks to my point of them never being blatant, because they were never like, don't masturbate, you're bad. But there was so much shame and secrecy around being sexual in any way.
Right.
So that also feeds into my sexuality of being a queer person, but that I just really hated feeling bad. And the worst part about it to me is that I never questioned the institution. I mean, I had questioning, but it was never, this is a bad institution. It was always, I am doing something wrong.
100%. I identify with that as well. And it gave me a really awful case of perfectionism that I never seemed to be able to overcome, because anytime there was a question about anything, it always went back to, like you said, what's wrong with me? Why don't I have enough faith? why is it that everybody else seems to be able to fall in line and do what they're supposed to do and be obedient, even though secretively we know that that's probably not what was happening, but outwardly it looked like everybody was just being obedient, but I had the issue. So therefore I must not have been faithful enough or doing whatever, praying enough, whatever it was that I was supposed to be doing. I wanted to ask you a question when you
Yeah.
said, because, there's a big age difference between us. I'm old enough to be your mom. And so I was just curious, generationally speaking, when you said they were never blatant, they were never blatantly coming out saying, don't masturbate. I was curious, were you ever, if you don't mind me asking, were you ever asked, like in temple recommend interviews, if you masturbated? Because I know that in my generation, I feel like only the guys were talked to about masturbating. Girls were never talked to about it, about masturbation.
No.
They weren't asked about it. So you weren't asked about it either.
Not that I can remember. I
Yeah.
know that I have heard horror stories about like the bishop interviews, but if
Mhm.
I did, I don't remember because I do come from like a good amount of trauma from my childhood, so there are like missing chunks of my childhood. So,
Yeah. Which
if
is
he did,
normal. Yeah.
yeah, totally normal,
Mhm.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I if he did, I don't remember, but I
Okay.
have
Yeah,
heard that he would.
I was just curious about that. Like,
Yeah.
because, girls can't possibly be sexual creatures, right? I
Oh,
mean,
no.
no. Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, that wasn't the conversation because there was no that sexual pleasure doesn't or female sexual pleasure doesn't exist in the church. You're not having sex to have fun or feel good. You're
Right.
having sex to procreate
And please
and
your husband.
please your husband. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yep. Yeah.
It's some bullshit.
It really is. Yeah. Yeah, it really is. So you were you pretty much raised in the church your whole childhood?
Yeah, all of my
Okay.
childhood.
Okay. Yeah.
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 Went to church most Sundays. I mean, unless something crazy was happening. My
Mhm.
mom was never my mom was indoctrinated herself. So
Mhm.
she believed that she was also wrong for the things that were just happening.
Mhm.
Um, the divorce was pretty nasty, and
Mm.
uh, it left the me and my siblings very traumatized. So
Yeah.
it was just like my mom had bigger issues going on than the church saying like you shouldn't live with your boyfriend, you're not married. Like there was harder things happening.
Yeah.
Um so like in the church, I mean, weirdly felt like an escape a little bit because
Oh.
yeah, because the church I knew what to expect every week.
Mhm.
I think it's hard for me to accept that there were good parts of the church and it's the same thing that I'm trying to accept in my journey of therapy, that there were good parts of my childhood, because
Mhm.
I think because I didn't get to feel angry about it at the time, all I
Mhm.
wanna do now is feel angry.
Yeah. I think that's really mature and really insightful on your part, actually, like, a couple of things you said, the first being you talked about how your mom was also indoctrinated. That's hard for a lot of kids. I don't mean children, I just mean, like, offspring.
Yeah.
That's hard for a lot of people to admit that their parents, like, some of it's not their fault because they were brainwashed as well. Um, but then also what you said about, finding that there were good parts about church, that it was kind of an escape, and
Yeah.
I thought the same thing, like, there were some actually really amazing parts about church for me.
Yeah.
Um, I also came from a divorced family, and I think for me, there was just this sense of seeing what quote unquote normal families looked like. It was kind of cool to be able to hang out with the normal families in the normal homes, which I'm putting that in air quotes for people that can't see. Yeah, see Kendra's air quoting too. Because really, what is normal? I don't think there is a normal family out there because there's no such thing as normal. There's just thing as differences.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I agree with you. That was hard for me when I first left the church too, was because I had this mentality of I just want the whole thing to burn to the ground because it's awful and terrible.
Yes.
And I'm not going to lie, there's a little part of me that still wants that, but there's also a part of me that can see what you're saying, which is that there were good things about it, and
Yeah.
it did serve a purpose, and it was actually good for my mom. She was a single parent. It was a safe place for the kids to be when she couldn't be there because she was working or whatnot. So yeah.
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 I mean, I think the other thing about something that did feel good at the time, and now I can see that it's bad, was that there was a standard of living, so I had something to be aspirational towards.
Mhm.
So there was it like the church simplifies things, you know? They tell
Yeah.
you they tell you exactly what to do and exactly how to be. So
Yep.
you have a very clear goal.
Right. And it makes I think at least at the time, it can make a lot of decision making really easy because when you have
Yeah,
decisions to make, you just are like, "Oh, well, this is what the church teaches, therefore this is the choice I'll make." And it seems
yeah,
so easy and it seems so simple at the time,
yeah,
but you have no idea when you're in the middle of it just how much damage it's causing.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I look back and uh everything I wanted to be was the exact opposite of who I was.
Yeah.
I was
Same.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was a gay girl. I wanted to be I wanted to feel I don't know what I'm trying to say. I don't know how to word it. I
Well,
wanted to No,
no,
you go
sorry.
ahead.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's okay.
What I was going to ask you was, do you feel like you always knew you were gay and you just couldn't act on that? I've heard some people say that, and then I've heard other people say, I had no idea I was gay because I was never even allowed to think that or entertain that. So I was curious what your perspective was on that.
Definitely the latter. I
Okay.
had no idea I was gay. I was actually like super boy crazy, and I really wanted a boyfriend, and
Uh-huh.
and there were like boys in the church that I would like set my intentions on, and I wanted nothing but to be their girlfriend. But uh looking back, the feelings I had towards certain girls in the church were probably very gay. Like
Mhm.
very gay queer feelings. And like that's why I'm making my movie Girls Camp because I want to like rewrite what the like traumas of the church, the traumas that it caused to me. Like I loved Girls Camp with
Mhm.
all my heart. And I think partly because I was quote unquote the edgy one because I came
Mhm.
from a worse family and I wasn't afraid to like say like uh edgy things. And I've always been a pretty funny person, so like I was always very popular at girls camp, so I loved that. Um
Mhm.
and I loved being around girls, I think because I was interested in them, like
Mhm.
in like like a relationship way. But I just didn't know. I just thought I was really, really excited to be around them, or I just thought I just thought they were really, really pretty, and I just thought they were really, really cool. But
Yeah.
looking back, it was crushes. I had crushes on them,
Mhm.
but because that wasn't an option in both society and the church, that you're not supposed to do that. So I didn't know what I was feeling was crushes. I thought it was just intense friendship.
Sure, yeah. Because like you said, wasn't an option.
No,
And in order to even considering it an option was not safe.
no,
And so when it's not safe, you just shut that down.
totally. And it
Yeah.
wasn't safe. I saw that it wasn't safe because my older sister came out.
Mm.
And so many people were incredibly judgmental towards her, other church members. And my mom was very like worried for her.
Mhm.
I think because the society tells you your life is harder because I mean it is. Your life is harder when you are gay.
Mhm.
So I saw my sister come out and have all these negative reactions, and I was like, well, that's I just my subconscious was like, that is not a fate I want for you, so we're not going to do that.
Yeah, that made it even probably more unsafe for you because you had a front
Totally.
row seat to what
Like,
happens when you come out.
yep,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
It wasn't until the pandemic, like 2020, that I was finally like, I don't think I can ignore this anymore. I think I am gay, and I think that might be okay. And I started seeing a trauma and queer or like LGBTQIA plus focused therapist.
Mhm.
So it wasn't until I started working with her that I was like that I finally was like, I'm okay. It's okay
Yeah,
to be gay.
right. It's interesting that you say 2020 and the pandemic. The further out we get from this pandemic, I have to be careful what I say here because I don't want my thoughts to be misconstrued, and so I'll explain them, but
Okay.
there's some really great things that came out of this pandemic. Now, I don't want to be misunderstood. We lost millions of lives and that was tragic. And a lot
Absolutely.
of tragedy came out of this pandemic as well. But one of the things these themes that I keep hearing over and over is that the pandemic essentially shut the world down. It made everybody kind of stop in their tracks. And one of the things I'm hearing over and over with people is that when the outside world went away, it forced them to look in and to start questioning everything because
Totally.
the world looked very different. And so many people have gone through transitions of all kinds during this pandemic. And in that respect, I think that's one of the good things that has come out of it. But again, I certainly don't want anybody to think I'm saying that it was good that we had a pandemic, 'cause I'm not saying that. It's been very tragic and on a lot of fronts. But one of the things that has come out of it is what you're saying right here, just a lot
Self-discovery.
of self-discovery on, so many fronts with so many
Totally.
people. Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
Well, and letting go of the expectations that um, a church organization, the people in that church organization, letting go of the expectations and the obedience and the things that are required of you, um, letting go of all of the callings and the going to church every Sunday. You can't gather in groups, and so you have to start kind of reflecting inward. And when people stopped going to church, I think that people actually realized that they had a better relationship with their children. They had a better relationship with each other because there wasn't all the stress of um, living up to this organization and living up to all the expectations that were put upon them um, without consent, because those expectations are put upon us from the time that we're children. So we just know that that's the way it's supposed to be, you know? We don't even know any differently. So when we are able to take a break from that, when we never thought we'd take a break from it, and then all of a sudden, wow, this feels different. And why does it feel different? It's because we're not going to church. We're not being required to do these things that are required of members of the church to be in good standing. So I think there's a lot to be said for shutting everything down and making it
Mhm.
so you have to actually look at yourself.
I totally agree.
Yeah. And I've heard from so many members that when church got shut down, they s- they didn't some of them didn't realize until they stopped attending even Zoom church that why am I not feeling lost? How come I'm not like actually feel better? I'm less stressed. I'm having more time with my family, all of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was a reset for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely a reset.
Yeah.
So, I heard you say earlier that you attended seminary. So, you were pretty in it. Did were you attending church through 2020 or I mean like through high school, through when did you start to kind of really have a transition?
Well, I stopped going to church when I was like 17 or 18, so almost, I'm so bad at math. I have no idea even how long ago that was. Was that? I have no idea.
9 years if you're 26.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been 8 or 9 years since I have been out. So it's been enough time to have a separation. And for the longest time, I just ignored everything. And I was like, well, I'm out. I don't have to think about it. And then it wasn't until I started the therapy with my therapist that I was like, oh, I'm actually very, very angry about this.
Mhm. That's one of those, those those magical little things, right? When we have bad things happen and we think that if we just don't think about them, 'em, they'll just magically sort of go away and disappear out of our lives until they
Yeah.
creep back up when we start delving into things.
Yeah.
Um, and, I love what you just said when you just said, "I'm actually really angry about this." I actually just posted on my personal social media account about a post about anger because I'm reading a book currently that talks about this, and I remember when I left, I wasn't angry either, and I used to say to people all the time, "Hey, I left the church, but I'm not angry. I left the church, but I'm not angry." And I had so many
Yeah.
of my still Mormon friends who would say things to me on Facebook like, "Oh, it's so good that you're not angry. At least you're not angry." Yeah, and it probably took me a year to get really angry, and then I got like you said, I got really, really angry. But I think
Yeah.
it's so
Period.
important that you feel okay admitting that because anger is a valid emotion and shit happened to you that is very anger inducing. That's valid.
Yeah.
That's very valid.
I mean, anger is something that women are not supposed to feel.
Right.
So I feel very powerful in my anger almost.
Good for
I,
you.
yeah, thank you. I, I didn't, there's no way in hell I would have accepted my anger or even started to be angry without therapy.
Oh, yeah. Well, I feel like you almost need somebody to give you permission to be angry when you've
Totally.
been raised in the church. Like, you need somebody to be able to say, "Hey, look, it's okay to feel your feelings." And
Yeah.
that's what I've been doing for the last couple of years is just feeling everything and allowing myself to feel it all and, and that includes anger. But, I say all the time, anger is what affects change. Like, there's so many things in the world that would not have changed if people hadn't gotten
Got
angry. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
I was very angry about when I was writing girls camp, I had this a couple of drafts that were just like highlighting how fucked up the church was and it was a huge like fuck you to the church and I was like I felt very excited to for Mormons to watch it and maybe feel like the possibility of them being like, yeah, the church is fucked up. Like
Mhm.
I wanted to um enact change and rage that way. But I realized after talking to my friend that I want to celebrate the queerness of the story. I
Mhm.
wanted I wanted that to be the main focus.
Mm. Yeah.
And because I kept telling my friend, I was like, well, if I change it to just a love story, how are they going to know that I'm mad? And
Mhm.
or how are they going to know that I want to say fuck you?
Mhm.
And she was like, just making a queer story is a fuck you to the church.
That's exactly what I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
The very act of making this film and telling this story, that is your big fuck you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's quite loud and it's quite out there. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no dancing around that. Do you wanna give us a little background on the film and kinda tell us what you're doing with that?
Yeah. So I started writing Girls Camp in January, I think. And it's about two girls named Joe and Lex. Our main girl is Joe, who is a very like anxious and insecure girl. She notices this girl named Lex who is just like so free and confident, and she wants nothing but to be near her. But she is so like insecure and feels like she can't um build up the
Courage.
courage. Thank you.
Yeah.
Build
Yeah.
up the courage to talk to her. So it's not until Lex goes to Joe that they finally start talking, and they realize that they have a connection, and it
Mhm.
turns into just a romantic interest. And we have the like villain of the story is named Eden, and Eden is just a child that's been, I mean, they're all 18 years old. So Eden is just a girl who's been completely indoctrinated by the church,
Mhm.
and she sees this queerness going on and is very upset by it.
Mhm.
But in keeping with the theme of the church never blatantly doing things, but always taking the passive aggressive route, Eden starts staring at them. Eden starts the like big climax of the short is that they're at a campfire, and Eden starts singing Choose the Right,
Mm.
and she starts giving her testimony of basically saying, um, anyone who is not this way is wrong, and that really upsets Joe, and she uh walks off, and Lex follows her, and they just have a moment together where they're holding each other. They don't
Mhm.
kiss, they don't, it doesn't turn into anything sexual. It's just them supporting each other and hugging and being together in the pain that the church has made them feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think I see some irony in the fact that your villain's name is Eden too. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not lost on me. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds amazing, and I wonder how many girls are gonna be able to or grown women who have memories are gonna be able to relate to
Yeah.
that story. How many girls fell in love at girls' camp that,
Couldn't act on it.
yeah, never felt safe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to rewrite my own history, um, because there definitely could have been romance at girls' camp,
Mhm.
but it was because it wasn't allowed, it never happened. But
Right.
I wanted to like kind of heal that within myself by making it a reality through the movie.
Mhm. Yeah. It sounds like a good form of therapy for you too. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
every movie I make has been therapeutic.
So you've made other films as well?
I have. I've made two other short films. Girls Camp is actually the first movie that I intend to make into a feature.
Okay.
Um, so the short film version of Girls Camp will be um basically like a proof of concept because it's very expensive to make features.
Okay.
And
Now,
I
when you say feature, does that mean like full length, like longer than a short?
yeah, full length
Okay.
feature. The
Okay.
feature, I'm hoping, or my goal would be like an hour and 30-minute movie.
Okay.
Yeah,
And for the short, what's the length looking like on that?
probably like 11 minutes.
Okay. So just a
Yeah,
short film. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
totally. Mhm.
It's enough to really drive home that point though.
I think so. I
Yeah.
That's what me and my writing partner have come to realize is that you don't you can get your point across if it's 100 and if it's 80 pages or if it's 11 pages,
Mhm.
you can achieve what you want if you can plan it out.
Yeah, and sometimes I think even the shorter ones can be more powerful because
Yeah.
you don't have time to get lost in some of the other parts of the story. It's very much you drive the point home. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
your is your writing partner also ex-Mormon?
She's not ex-Mormon, but is she was raised Christian and
Okay.
she hasn't left the church, but she sees the flaws.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
I wanted someone who could be like, "Yeah, this is fucked up."
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I
Yeah.
think you kinda have to be invested in that to make a film like this, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Earlier you had mentioned that you had experienced some, like a lot of childhood trauma. I didn't know
Yeah.
if that was something you wanted to expound on if you were comfortable with that or if you wanted to leave that part of your story alone.
I think I was just curious, is it of interest to the podcast if I'm talking about things that are not Mormon related?
So what we tell people is your story is yours and every part of your story is your story. And so you can tell it in whatever way you want. People will get from your story what they get from it, but mainly it's for you.
Okay.
Because Kendra says this all the time, so I'm gonna just quote her. She says all the time, "There is something really powerful about going back and listening to your own story in your own voice." And I have told my own story and have gone back and listened to it several times. It's very cathartic and healing, very, very cathartic. And so I always tell guests, this is really mainly for you. So you can do this however you want to do it. But whatever parts you decide to share, the people that need to hear it and get the message from it and identify will. So
Okay.
yeah, it's just whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay.
And we've also had guests who have never been Mormon. We've had, you
Oh,
know,
wow. Okay.
yeah, I actually just recently did a very lengthy interview with somebody who was part of a different religious cult.
Okay.
And we were able to go down some rabbit holes comparing and contrasting that person's experience with
Yeah.
Mormonism too. So, yeah, whatever
Okay.
you want to tell is fine.
Okay. Well, I would say the biggest trauma from my childhood, the like most outstanding thing that has affected me is the thing I've already been talking about with Mormonism is that I always felt like I was the one that was in the wrong. I was the one that was weird. I was the one that was different. I was always fucking up. So
Mhm.
it always made me feel um like I mean because my biological father um treated me so different from my sisters. Um it wasn't all bad. He did think I was like I the things that I could get credit for was being like the funny one or being
Mhm.
the easygoing one. So I mean that was something that I got credit for with both of my parents was that if I was the easiest one to deal with because I internalized everything. I
Mhm.
never expressed any negative emotions because I saw my siblings express negative emotions and I saw the reactions to it. So I never wanted to rock the boat in any way. I wanted to be the one that they could rely on and the ones that they could didn't have to think about.
Mm-hmm.
So I denied most of myself for most of my childhood. And that was always rewarded.
Right.
So it was very toxic.
Yeah.
Bad for me.
Yeah. I relate to that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. I was the bigger kid too. A lot of that.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, Christina and I have talked about kind of this very thing where you just don't want to be a burden, right? You see
Yep.
that other people in your family, whether there's other people getting in trouble, or you see that people get in trouble in the church, and or at school, and you don't want to draw attention to yourself. You don't want to be a burden. You don't want to be
Yeah.
something that's going to make anybody else's life any harder than it already is, because
Yep.
you already know how hard your life is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, yep, I feel that.
Yeah. That was I think that's why my feeling sad and feeling angry it does feel so powerful because I could never do that in my childhood.
Yeah, it wasn't safe to use your voice. It
No.
wasn't safe to have an opinion. It
No.
wasn't safe to feel anything.
Mm-mm.
Um, yeah, I feel that really deeply. And it is super powerful coming on the other side of that to find that voice. And it takes practice to start using it. And it takes practice to feel what you feel when you haven't been allowed to feel things for so long.
Yeah.
I commend you for making a film, because when we talk about using our voice, I think for me that's very metaphorical.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't necessarily mean using the physical voice, but
Yeah.
just making yourself known to the world. And that could be through filmmaking. It could be through art. I know several people who have come out of Mormonism and have turned to art, and that is the way they express
Yeah.
their story, and they use their voice. But it takes some practice, and it's scary at first because you've been taught not to do that. You've been silenced and silenced and silenced. And B, there there is fallout. And you have to get comfortable with the fallout. So, for example, it's powerful to use your voice, but you're gonna rock the boat. You're gonna upset people. People are gonna
Yeah.
quote unquote unfriend you, abandon you. And that's hard also. Um, and you can get to this point where you say, hey, if those people don't agree with me or can't accept me for who I am, that's fine. I don't need them in my life anyway. But the
Yeah.
truth is, it hurts when it first happens.
Totally.
Yeah, it hurts because also it causes you to sort of take a bigger look at things and say, I guess our relationship was not as deep as I thought it was, because
Yeah.
they can't accept me when I use my voice. And so, um, like I said, I commend you for, one of the ways of using your voice is through your filmmaking. It's a powerful method of communication.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
I think because you said something about like needing to practice because it was something that was never allowed and it's new to me and it's new
Mhm.
to the people who find it like later on. But I completely agree with that. I think I am very much practicing doing it with other people because with myself and with my therapist, I feel totally safe um to feel anything, but
Mhm.
and speak up about anything. But with other people, especially my family, it's still a huge feat and a huge challenge to uh I can't think of the right word, to
be vulnerable too, right?
to be vulnerable and to question things, or uh to quote to rock the boat, like to express anything negative.
Right, to go against the status quo.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
because
because go ahead, sorry.
it's okay. I was just gonna say, because I've always been good at sharing positive things,
Uh-huh.
and but I mean, I still feel worried about sharing anything negative,
Mhm.
even if it's like, um actually, never mind.
No,
I
that's okay. But I wanna validate that that's normal. That
Yeah,
that what you just said, that that's so normal that you worry about sharing anything negative, because the truth is, like I said, there is fallout, and
yeah,
the thing I'm learning over and over and over again is when I choose to speak my truth, part of what comes with that package is that it's going to make some people uncomfortable.
yeah.
And the hard part when you are a people pleaser, ask me how I know. The hard part about that is that, and like what Kendra was saying, was we talk about this, I don't ever want to be the cause of somebody else's negative feelings or making somebody feel bad. I don't want to be the cause of that.
Yeah,
So it's been hard learning and internalizing that I'm not responsible for anybody else's feelings. It might feel that way because they're feeling something based on what I've said, but that's their issue. It's their story. It's their path to walk. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this like I have this mastered, because far from it, like
yeah,
super far from it. I'm
uh-huh,
still very careful what I say in front of
yeah,
my Mormon family and friends. I
yeah,
still gatekeep my own speech. I
yeah,
do it kind of subconsciously because I don't want to, quote unquote, offend anybody. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
yeah,
Um, but it does get easier and easier as you practice it more and more. And I think you practice it like you've been doing it with your therapist. You do it with safe people, and you understand that those people, they don't reject you and they are safe, and it gives you a little bit more bravery to maybe speak to some other people, and then you kind of see what happens. And
yeah,
yeah, I've lost friends, I've lost people in my life, but on the flip side, maybe not but, and on the flip side of that, I have made space for really amazing other people to
mhm,
come into my life, and I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world. So, yeah.
yeah. I think, um, allowing yourself to be and feel whatever you feel in the moment is
Mhm.
extremely powerful and very life-changing. But I agree, it is very hard. There is a lot of there or not a lot. I'd say there is the thought of fear around making girls camp, because I do still have Mormon family members, and
Mhm.
I was just talking to one yesterday where she's like, you don't want to offend people for what they believe in. And I was like, in my head, I was like, I'm never intending to offend someone. And by telling my experience, I don't think it should like I hope it wouldn't offend someone to see a different experience from what they've
Mhm.
experienced.
Yeah, because your story is your story. And I'll follow that up. One of the things that helped me in that respect, and I don't know if this will help you or not, but um it occurred to me when I was going through all of this that my Mormon friends and family don't ever worry about offending anybody else by
No,
sharing the gospel.
no.
They don't ever worry that getting on Facebook and talking about their baptisms and their church related things and their missionary experiences, they don't they're never concerned about offending anybody by that. And understanding that kind of helped me realize, like, I don't have to worry about what I say offending other people either. Again, I'm not saying that because I've mastered it, far from it. But it does help to keep that thought in the back of my head. Like, my Mormon friends don't think twice about getting on Facebook and saying, my kid is getting baptized and, he's felt the Holy Spirit and whatever. So if I want to get on there and say that this has been damaging to me, I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I love that. Thank you for telling me that. I think that is a great way to look at it. Also, you brought up baptisms. I think
Mm-hmm.
baptisms are such bullshit. You don't know shit around 8 years old.
You don't.
You are you're a child. Feel the Holy Spirit, my ass. Like you do what your parents tell you to do at that age.
And you hit the nail on the head right there when you said you do what your parents tell you to do. So at 8 years old, it drives me nuts when everybody gets on social media and they say, Johnny has chosen to be baptized. Bullshit. Johnny may have said he wants to be baptized, but that's because Johnny is very well aware that if he were to say, no, I don't want to be baptized, that's going to spell social and religious suicide for him. It's going to cause him to be seen as the outsider. His own family may reject him. The kids at church are going to make fun of him and bully him. The only safe response is, of course I want to get baptized. Of course I'm feeling the Holy Spirit. There is no other option. And as far as I'm concerned, this is child abuse. And I know that there's some controversy about that. Not everybody will agree with me, but I don't think 8-year-old children, I don't think anybody should be baptized into any church until they're a grown adult and they can make a truly informed decision about it. That's just my opinion.
But is anything informed within the church? Like, there's no informed consent within the church. There's no making an informed decision within the church because there's so many things that are hidden from you.
Right.
Like in the temple, especially, is probably the best example that I can think of. You don't get told what the ceremony is and what you're agreeing to, what you're covenanting, what you're committing your life to until after you're in there. And it's the same thing as when you're a kid being baptized, that if you were to stand up and walk out, because you can walk out with your own free will and choice, air quotes again, your own free will and choice, you're in that room with all of your ward members, stake members, people who know who you are, people who developed community with you, and you stand up and you walk out. You don't have free will and choice in that situation. You sit in there until it's over, and then you decide what you're going to do. There may be some people who have been brave enough to stand up and walk out, but social ostracism. Ostracism. There we go. Ostracism.
I have a hard time with that word too.
Cultural ostracism. How do you accept that that's what's going to happen to you and continue on the path of what you think intuitively you should do without feeling like I'm going to be torn down by this group of people? I'm going to lose status. I'm going to lose stature. I'm going to not have my calling that makes other people realize that I am a worthy member of this church. Worthiness is so such a broad thing that everybody thinks, okay, well, if you have a temple recommend, then you're worthy. If you have a temple recommend, you're a good person. And it's so not true. So not true.
Well,
I was gonna connect that with children, with the informed consent. You ask a child, do you want to be baptized and have a little party afterwards and we get to have cupcakes and you get a new outfit? Or do you want to have your parents be like, oh, so disappointed? Just like Saige was saying earlier, you want your parents' approval, right? You want your parents to be to love you unconditionally, and there is no such thing as unconditional love in the church.
No
unconditional love from anybody.
Everything's conditional in the church.
Mm-hmm. Well, and just from a purely primal aspect, if we just want to get down to a really primal sort of DNA level, humans and mammals, for that matter, all mammals are tribal creatures where we can only survive in groups, period. Totally. And our we are created and our DNA is such that we have to have connections with other humans.
Yeah.
It's really the only way we survive. And so when you're a little kid or even an adult, I will say, the thought of losing, being quote unquote thrown out of the group and losing connection, like you feel that on a really primal level, on a really deep survival level.
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing even as an adult, like Kendra was saying in the temple, like you don't get to, I'm assuming since you left earlier that you didn't go through the temple as an adult. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you go through for the first time or even for other people by proxy, there's this moment where they kind of say to you, you know, hey, you have one last chance to back out before you make these covenants. So like if you're not feeling it or you don't think you can commit, like now's the time to back out before you go through. So just raise your hand and someone will come walk you and escort you out and you don't have to do this. The problem is they don't tell you what you're committing to. And so, Kendra and I are both nurses. We're in healthcare. So when you have something called informed consent in healthcare, before a patient can consent to anything, they have to be told all of the details of what they're consenting to. Here is the procedure. Here are the pros. Here are the cons, the risks, the benefits. Here are all the bad things that could happen if you did it. Here are the good things and what we're hoping to accomplish with it.
Yeah.
Knowing all of that, do you want to consent to do this?
Yeah.
In the church, it's kind of like when you're a little kid and you get bullied and you want to be in the kids club and they bring you the little contract where they cover everything and they say, here, just sign on the dotted line, but you don't get to read what's in the contract.
Yeah.
Who does that? Would you sign anything without being able to read the details? No, you wouldn't do that. But that's commonplace in the church. This is what they do. They don't tell you, but then in the next breath they say, so you can back out now, but if you choose to go forward and continue with it, just remember, you're going to be held responsible for everything you make promises about in the next room over or the next section of this ceremony. It's just convoluted and it's not right at all.
It's incredibly convoluted. And
but you're right. Going back to what you said, baptism is ridiculous. The frontal lobe of a human brain does not fully develop until someone is in their early 20s.
Yeah.
So, and as I say all the time, you could not leave an 8-year-old home alone overnight. You cannot make an 8-year-old responsible for the care of other children. 8-year-olds are not allowed to consent anything in their lives. Their parents have to consent because they're not just minors. They're like really minors. They're 8,
Yeah.
But somehow we think that they're just mature enough to make decisions that we say have eternal consequences, like consequences for eternity. Somehow that's just okay.
Somehow that makes complete sense. But
again, like in what I was going to say to you at the beginning of this interview was, don't you know, Saige, you're not supposed to ask questions. You're supposed to just be obedient and have faith and just believe. That's right. Just do it. Don't ask questions. How dare you be a critical thinker? Do you see what critical thinking got you?
Oh, no.
Got you right out of the church.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
Dang, I had something to say.
Oh, that's okay. You can take your time and think about it. If we have any pauses like this, we'll just cut them out when we edit. So I'll edit this out. It's fine.
Okay.
Don't feel stressed.
I think it goes back to something Kendra said, was the concept of worthiness in the church is something that I mean, and I think this extends to religions outside of Mormonism. I think it's for women especially, you're only quote unquote worthy if you are submissive, if you are kind to all the time, if you are easy to be around, if you are, and I think I would extend that to even I think there was a certain level of, which I feel like I've alluded to a couple times in this conversation, is I think there is a certain amount of body shaming in the church.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
And
just body shaming, but what you're expected to be. So purity, the whole
Yeah.
thing you were talking about with masturbation, there's shame and there's
Yeah.
this expectation to be pure. But I actually, let me backtrack a little bit. When you're expected to be pure, when the normal human behavior is to seek sexual gratification, to seek sexual, experiences, to know what you like personally, through masturbation. What does it feel like? What is pleasure? What is this thing that, discovering your body, self-discovery, know yourself. If
Yeah.
you've been told for so long that those things are wrong, you lose who you are and you become this tool for procreation, like you were saying. You're
Totally.
not given the opportunity to be an autonomous human being. And especially women are property, really, especially in Utah. Women are
Yes.
absolute property.
I completely agree.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know I speak for a lot of people when I say all of that messaging causes you also to just hate your own body.
Yeah.
And if you can't even love the body that you're in, you there's that old saying, you can't love anybody else until you love yourself first.
Yeah.
I used to think that was kind of bullshit, except now I kind of get it.
Yeah.
And on a really deep level, it's true. Like,
Yeah.
it really is. There have been conference talks now, granted they're old talks, but there have been conference talks where they have point blank said to women, like, exercise, lose some fat, put some makeup on, like, look pleasing to your husband. I mean, what is that messaging?
Yeah.
It's so damaging.
Yeah. And it's a bunch of bullshit for a kid to, and it just at every level of your body being anything besides what they wanted, you were made to feel wrong to be anything besides what they wanted.
Mhm. That just actually, this conversation just brought back a memory for me that I'm gonna share with you. When I was a teenager in the '80s, I remember now, they had a woman come and talk to us, actually more than once. She was a beauty pageant, I don't want, like, what's the word I'm looking for? She would basically help groom girls who were going into beauty pageants.
Okay.
Um, and I don't wanna use her name. I still remember her name, because I think she was a good person. Like, I don't think she was trying to do anything bad. This was the world that she lived in. She was in the beauty pageant world. But they had her come and talk to the girls in our stake about grooming and how you need to look for boys, for men. And they didn't come out and say it like that, but that was absolutely the underlying message. It was kind of this idea of, well, if you don't walk straight with your shoulders back, you're not going to catch the eye of somebody. Your hair has to be a certain way. You have to shave a certain way. You have to do all these things that really all of it is just a social construct, right?
Yeah.
I remember this, and that memory just came back to me. And in the '80s, there was a woman who was I think she ended up being Miss USA or Miss America from Utah. They had her come and speak at youth conference. Same thing. Like, the two of them spoke about grooming and how to present, how to win a man, how to win a man,
Yeah.
you know? And at the same time, having to write down all these qualities, all these things that you have to be in order to get a man, not what are you looking for in a partner, but what do you have to be? How do you have to change yourself in order to win a man?
Yes.
It's really, really, really messed up.
It's very fucked. It's incredibly fucked.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings me back to the thoughts of the stake dances. I wanted nothing more than to be chosen to slow dance with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And I was never chosen.
I wasn't either.
Because because I was taller, because I was bigger, because I would headbang during the songs that I thought were fun to dance to. I was never ever chosen, and I always felt like shit after, because I was never gonna get what I wanted, and they tell you what to want, because I also remember this activity where I think it was called the time capsule activity, or like where you would basically create your wedding, your dream wedding, and your temple wedding. And I was obviously under 18, because that was I'd left after that, but I created my dream wedding, and I was meant to open it after I got married in the temple. And it's just, there's no room to be individual or unique.
That actually makes me ragey.
Yeah.
How messed up is that? First of all, so what was the point when you open it up after your temple marriage? Was it for you to go back and see if you lived up to everything that you had dreamed about or wanted? Yeah. And I bet there was no room in any of those time capsules to say, I want to marry a girl.
Nope. Fuck.
There was no, and there was no room at the stake dances for a girl to ask you to dance,
No.
That couldn't happen.
Absolutely not.
I just quit going to the stake dances after a while.
Yeah, I was just thinking about so with the way that we're supposed to be, like the whole list thing, the way that we have to be for our husband, or the way we're supposed to be. You're talking about grooming, but the women in Utah there's so many women in the church who have had breast augmentation, who have had plastic surgery, who are on antidepressants. And I'm not shaming that at all. I'm on medication myself. But there's so much discontinuity or disconnect between who you really are and who you're told you have to be. The church also preaches that what we have here, what our health conditions are, what our body is, what our, who we marry, those kind of things, those are all things we chose in the pre-existence. So if you have health conditions, it's your own fault.
Mm-hmm.
You chose this before you were brought to earth. It's not something that anybody's going to feel sorry for you about. You just have to deal with it, and you have to do the best that you can with that. So I really think that in the church there's a lot of hypocrisy in that way, where they're telling people to serve one another. You have these forced friendships with visiting, teaching, or ministering. But do you really have connection? Because how can you really have connection with people if you don't even know who you are? We're talking about loving yourself. First you have to love yourself before you can love somebody else. But really, if you're told that this is who you have to be, then how do you find out who you want to be in a relationship with, who's the right person to love? You're surrounded by all these people who are disingenuous. They're disconnected from their own true self, and they're being the self that they're told to be. So how do you find people to connect to in an organization where everybody is not who they're really supposed to be? But they all think that they are. So you were saying something about earlier about having connections with people and weeding people out of your life that aren't good for you. How do you know? How do you know who's not good for you if you've been taught your whole life that this is who you are and this is what's right and wrong? You allow yourself to be around people and allow narcissistic type people into your life, family members, people who have no boundaries, which is Mormons in general. The Mormon church in general has no boundaries. So how do you figure out who to get out of your life if you don't even know who's being a narcissist, who's being abusive? How do you make that connection? How do you decide, okay, well, I have a family here on earth. They are so good to me, right? I'm supposed to be connected to my family, but they don't say if your family is a bunch of fucking losers who are abusive to you and make you feel like shit, you should still love them and you should still keep them in your life.
Yeah.
But if
Yep.
you know who you are, actually genuinely know who you are and figure out what you actually want, you find healthy relationships in life, you learn that those people have no place in your life. Family is not just blood. Family is not just blood. Family is definitely the people that you make connections with outside of the family.
Yeah.
100%.
That was
100%.
talk. Thank you for coming.
It was a great TED Talk. Well, and building off of what you said about how do you know who these narcissists and these abusive people are if you don't even know yourself? I think going along with that, I don't want to say the flip side of it because I think they go hand in hand, is how do you know people aren't narcissists? And let me explain that. When I was in the church, I just had this view of who everybody was based on what my religious paradigm told me. So what I figured out when I got out of the church is that there were a lot of people out there who I thought were sketchy, leading bad lives or whatever. I figured out that actually those were the really authentic people. And so that was hidden and kept from me while I was inside the church too. I made judgments about people because of the lifestyles that they led, not understanding that there was actually nothing wrong with those people at all.
Yeah.
So it causes confusion on just so many levels. Again, it affects every level of human connection. And this is another rabbit hole I've gone down many times, and I'll spare you all the details of it. But just this idea that when we're Mormon, we see the world through Mormon lenses.
Yes.
And it's not until we take those lenses off that we actually can see people for who they really are without looking at them through the Mormon glass.
Yeah.
And it's a very different experience. And I find as I go through life that I'm still taking lenses off. I'm still, like, for example, and I've said this before, I'm a white person. So I've had to learn how to take off my white privilege lenses in order to see the world through the eyes of marginalized populations. Or, I'm a woman, taking those lenses off. Like we wear a lot of lenses, but the Mormon lenses are very Coke bottle thick glasses and they distort the world in big, big ways.
Yeah.
So Saige, I'm actually really impressed by the fact that you're figuring out who you are at your age.
Me too.
Thank you.
I think that so I have children that are your age. My oldest son is 26 and my oldest daughter is 26. So I'm looking at you thinking I'm glad that people are actually figuring out who they are and standing up for that, because it has taken me my whole life to actually figure out who I am. So I didn't figure out that I had any sexual attraction to women until I was allowed to actually entertain that idea. I've been married to a man for 26 years, and it's the same thing where we think in the Mormon church that we need to hold on to this relationship no matter what, because we're taught from a very young age that I am a child of God. I know where I'm going. I know what I'm supposed to be. I know what all the steps are. I'm supposed to get married in the temple. I'm supposed to be married to a man. I'm supposed to have children. I'm supposed to do all these things. You're just checking the boxes.
Yeah.
And you don't entertain the idea that maybe my connection isn't necessarily specific to being with a man, but my connection is specific to being with someone who I can connect with on a deep level.
Yeah.
So I'm a little jealous that I didn't figure it out earlier. And I'm just really impressed by you. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you so
That's
much.
awesome. I concur. Yeah.
I think the thickest lens that Mormonism gave me was the straight lens. I think that was literally summer of 2019 I wanted to dig my feet in the I'm straight sand.
Mm-hmm.
And so I dated a guy that I should have never I wasn't taught that you can love a man and just love them as a friend. I was
Right.
taught that love means romantic interest, which means marriage, which means kids, which means blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
So I loved my friend and I thought that meant that I was supposed to date him. And I was extremely confused. And I think subconsciously, I wanted to prove that I was straight. So I dated him and it ended horribly because I pretty immediately felt that it was wrong. But I had sex with him and it was extremely traumatic for me because I felt in my body that it felt wrong. But I told
Mm-hmm.
myself, this is what you're supposed to want, so you push past your boundaries. Like, I mean, I get in sexual relationships you're supposed to figure out what your partner likes, but I did it not from a standpoint of I want to have this fun experience with him. I did it from a standpoint of I want you to be the one that gets the most out of this experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I was completely ignoring the fact that I didn't want that to happen. And I didn't want any of it to happen and it all felt wrong. And I attribute that whole situation with him, the sex, the dating, the everything to fucking Mormonism, to the church making me feel like the only option was ever to date and marry a man.
The only option was to continuously betray yourself.
Absolutely.
And it sounds to me like that's what you're describing even in that situation was you were going to betray yourself and forego any of your own needs or desires or wants in order to keep this other person happy.
Yes. Totally.
But it destroys you on the inside.
Absolutely. I became extremely angry towards him. And it was super unfair because he didn't do anything wrong. But I became very mean. I became very resentful. And it ruined our friendship. And I will never be friends with him again. And it sucks because he was a great person. But I 100% attribute it back to my upbringing in the church.
And I want to say that's what you just discussed. That's not easy shit to talk about.
Yeah.
And I really want to honor your vulnerability there because people need to hear that. People need to know they're not alone in that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that from your heart because I know that's not easy.
Yeah. No problem.
Yeah.
I mean, my intention with doing this podcast, my intention with making Girls Camp, my intention with like most of my life is to make others feel like they're not alone. And in return make myself feel like I'm not alone because I find the community that I've been searching for.
Absolutely.
And I say that all the time that I think one of the first components and biggest components to healing is being validated and knowing that you're not alone. Because as soon as we know there are other people going through the same thing, it's kind of like this little bit of a sigh, like a little bit of a, okay, I'm not out here on my own. There's other people who get this.
Yeah.
So I want to touch on the idea that when you, not just about being a friend with a boy and thinking that that needs to go in a direction where you have a romantic relationship, but in any kind of connection where you feel like you have a deep connection with someone. When I was down in Arizona visiting Christina, we met with somebody who actually said something that was really profound, and that was it was Christina, help me to kind of tell this after you figure out what I'm trying to say.
I think I know where you're going, but go
When
ahead.
you have such a deep connection with someone that's your friend, that that you are connected to, it does not mean that you should jump into a romantic relationship with them. Not every deep connection needs to be a romantic or sexual relationship, but in the church, when you have a connection with somebody, especially man and woman, I mean, you've seen how people start with, they go to college to get married. Basically, they go to BYU to get their MRS. They
Yep.
I think that what this friend of ours said was actually really interesting, because we crave connection. We crave connection with people, and when we actually find that connection, if it seems like, I've never had this before, I need this, and then you're trying to figure out what it all means as far as like being in a relationship with somebody or being in a friendship with somebody, and what lines do you cross, and if you cross those lines, like you said with your friend, you can't go back.
Nope.
It is really hard to go back unless you have really great communication and you have this level of maturity and understanding of who you are, what you want. It's a form of feeling rejected also, for if one person wants that, the other one doesn't. Is it going to feel like rejection if it doesn't feel right when that's happening? There's so many, it's so convoluted. There are so many things to think about with friendships and relationships. In the church, when you get married, that is your partner, and you don't go outside of that. And I think that also there are people that don't have deep connections, especially with their partner, but also they can't have deep connections with other people because it feels like a betrayal.
Yes.
Because it feels like they are going into a relationship with somebody else, and there's lines that are blurred, and lines that it's like, okay, well, I feel this thing. However, I can't do this because I'm married to this person who I'm really not deeply connected to, and I don't feel these feelings with them. So I can't have any other kind of partnerships, relationships, friendships that are close. It's really, really messed up, and it really isolates people, especially women feel isolated. I know men feel isolated in the church too, but I think, I'm speaking from the point of a woman. So it's very, very isolating, very isolating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're married, there are these rules that you have to follow. You can't have here, for example, in the church, as a woman, if I'm married, I would never be allowed to even form a deep connection with somebody else of the opposite sex, because that would be construed as cheating, or the same sex. Yeah. Well, you can have a close girlfriend, but there's lines, like there's things you can't do. There's lines you can't cross because it's called cheating. It's infidelity. I could go down a whole rabbit hole with this.
It's boundaries imposed on you by an outside entity. So it's not even your own boundaries that you have for yourself. It's boundaries that you're told that you have because that makes you worthy. They're not boundaries that you necessarily agree with or resonate with, so it's like, It's like having a husband who says, who does not allow you to have any of the money. They're managing all the money, and they'll give you an allowance to go buy groceries, or they'll give you an allowance to go do the things that you need to do. But it's really their choice what you get.
Yeah.
You don't have choice. You don't get to choose, okay, I want to have these friendships and relationships with people that are deep and connecting. But I also don't want to, hurt my husband. It's not like that. It's that it's imposed upon you. It's not what I want. It's what I'm told that I want.
There's no freedom.
None.
Exactly.
And then again, all of it is a construct, right? Who made these arbitrary rules? And men, exactly. No, that's legitimate.
Yeah.
That's a legit answer.
Yeah.
But it's who made the rules? Where did these rules come from? And it's not just church. I mean, society, in a lot of respects, follows these same rules. And what it does is it creates this constant, it's a constant betrayal of yourself. Because if you're feeling a certain way about somebody, but society has made an arbitrary rule that you're not allowed to feel this way about that person, that's a betrayal of self. There's a lot of ways we betray ourselves over and over and over. But certainly religion is responsible for a lot of it, Yeah.
We're told what's right and wrong, right? We're told from a very young age what's right and wrong. We don't have to think for ourselves what's right and wrong. So just like the whole thing about, Saige, you were talking about LGBTQIA+, embracing that community. You can embrace that community in the Mormon Church, but you cannot be a part of that community. You can't be a person who is LGBTQIA+. You can't do any of those things. You can't have close relationships with people. And honestly, like, people, when they see two women together and they know that one of them's, gay, they're going to assume that there's a relationship between those two people.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works. They think that every man who's gay is looking at every single other man thinking that they want them.
Yeah.
So they're all reserved and nervous about being around a gay man. Well, it's not how it works,
Right.
Nope.
You develop connection with people based on, mutual understanding, feeling connected with that person because you have mutual interests. And, it's not, I guess there's some people who have, it's, I'm attracted to this person. I'm attracted to every woman, whatever, or every man. But I don't think authenticity works that way.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. Yeah, so many assumptions, and then, you were talking about, we're taught what's good and bad. Well, then that you could go down a rabbit hole with that too. What is good? What is bad? What are those definitions, and who made those definitions, and why? I'm just sort of now of the opinion that as long as you're not involving minors and nobody's getting hurt and everybody's consenting, why don't we just leave people alone? Like,
Absolutely.
If people are fulfilled, imagine if everybody was allowed to just be in whatever way that looked for them. Like I said, so long as people are consenting and kids aren't involved. I draw the line in the sand there. But can you just imagine how much happier the world would be? But it's just, all this.
I think that needs to be not in the sand. I think that needs to be in the concrete.
Yeah.
Not involve children.
Yeah.
Children cannot consent.
Right.
You don't involve children.
Yeah.
You wait until somebody's an adult. And even like you were saying, the frontal lobe thing, people who are 18 to 25 may or may not have that, ability to have that frontal lobe developed, where they have the ability to have, be reserved, or to make a decision that's not based on primal, your primal needs.
Right.
Yeah. My lobe just got done cooking.
Well, I will tell you, Saige. It's really,
like, oh, I gotta
it's well cooked.
get
It's well cooked. Good job. Because you're making some really amazing connections, and your thoughts are very cohesive, and
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there were other things that I was thinking of talking about.
like other defining moments when you were in church and school. There's a book called The Four Agreements. I don't know if you've read it or listened to it.
I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing that I really kind of take away from that, that's really actually helped me quite a bit with interpersonal relationships, is recognizing that when somebody is behaving poorly, even if it's towards me, insulting or whatever, it's not about me, it's about them. It's helped me in my work too. I don't take things personally from patients. They don't know me,
Yeah.
but that we make agreements with ourselves from a very young age based on things we were shamed for, things we were told that were wrong or bad about us. There's a part in that book that talks about a little girl who used to sing. She used to sing, a lot. She sang all the time until she was about 4 years old. And then her mom had a headache one day, was, feeling terrible. And her mom, being human, lost her shit and basically said, shut up, shut up, shut up. You have a terrible voice. And the little girl made the agreement with herself that she was never going to sing again. And didn't really realize that she made that agreement with herself until she was much older, and then looking back and seeing that that was a defining moment in her life that stopped her from doing something that she loved.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of those defining moments in all of our lives.
Yeah.
But it's hard to uncover them unless we do the work, unless we do that shadow work, unless we look back and face those things that are really, really shitty that happened, and giving, I think you said about your mom, right? She was doing the best that she could with what she knew. She was also indoctrinated.
Yeah.
I feel that same way about my mom, and it's not just indoctrination from the church, it's indoctrination from our country. I mean, you look at Fox News, right? You look at things that we're all told, when we're watching these things, that's the truth.
Yeah.
The reality is that the media, they twist things and they make it so that and they're paid, they're corrupt. They accept money from people who want them to further their agenda. So I think that I just kind of rambled there a little bit, but, that was cohesive what I was saying.
Yes, I totally get it.
Well, we always say rambling is good because that's where we make connections.
Yeah.
I'll concur. Kendra is the one that actually got me to read or listen to the Four Agreements, and it is I like it. It's a short book, but it's really profound. And it helped me kind of identify agreements I'd made with myself as a kid too, based on some of these life-changing things that, again, I didn't even realize I'd made an agreement. Like touching on some of what you had said, Saige, you had seen, for example, what happened to your older sister when she came out.
Yeah.
So then you made an agreement with yourself, like, this isn't safe. I can't, the agreement with myself now is don't come out, avoid that at all costs, because that's not a safe thing to do.
Yes.
And I feel like we make these agreements all the time, and I'm still having to be mindful of agreements I make with myself even today based on experiences I have. And
yeah.
So obviously you're happier on the outside of the church.
Oh, yeah, by a landslide.
Yeah.
I feel like my life has completely changed. I think I needed the time off from thinking about it for those 6 or 7 years where I just ignored it. But I think the therapy came around at the exact right time, and I just literally can't stress enough how much therapy has changed my life. But my therapist is amazing. But but yeah, I think it all worked out the way it was supposed to for me. And I mean, I say that everything worked out the way it was supposed to be, with the caveat of certain things didn't need to happen. Because
Sure.
I think there's a lot of times like, well, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's like I shouldn't have had the threat of being killed.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And I am finally realizing all these things, and I'm very happy to be on the other side of a lot of perspectives and thought processes.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and you said therapy came around right at the right time, because therapy came around when you were ready to do therapy.
Yeah.
Like, not everybody's ready, and you have to be ready. You have to be ready to hunker down and do that, what Kendra was talking about, the shadow work, and
Yeah.
dig into the hard stuff, because until you're ready to just really get into the meat of it, I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but you're not really going to get out of it what you need to.
I completely agree, because I've been going to therapy since I was like 8 or 12. So like I've had like
Hmm.
a million therapists, but it wasn't until I decided to see my current therapist, who I knew was queer and trauma informed, that I knew I would be looking at who I was as a person and who I was with these new discoveries, that I knew I wasn't ready until 2020.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. When you were seeing therapists when you were young, were they therapists that were Mormon? Were they therapists that were part of the Mormon church?
Oh no, they weren't Mormon, but they were they challenged me in the ways that I was ready for. So like, but I needed to be challenged in a major way, and I was, when I found my most recent one, when the one I'm with right now.
Makes you really take a close look at yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was easier to like talk about the easier talk. I take that part. I don't know what I'm saying.
It's easier to talk about things that are superficial, right? With
Yeah.
people that you can trust.
Yeah.
But then having a therapist that you can trust, that you feel like you're safe, that you can share those things about yourself that were taboo
Yeah.
back when you were told were wrong.
Yeah.
I think it makes a huge difference when you have somebody that you can trust, that you can talk to, that you can tell them anything, and there's no judgment or shame attached to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I just want to throw in there, I just feel kind of compelled to say this, because first of all, I agree. Therapy, I've been in and out of therapy on and off for the past several years, and categorically changed my life. I do want to say, sometimes when we talk about therapy, especially when we're talking about formal therapy with a counselor or a therapist, unfortunately in America, that's a privilege for some people.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there. Sadly, our healthcare system does not prioritize mental health, which I think if we prioritized mental health, we would see an immediate change in physical health.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times the reasons we have some of our physical issues, I don't want to say we have them, but that we may not be healing from them as quickly or as efficiently, is because we're still hanging on to traumas that
Yeah.
we don't have mental health help for. So that said, I just want to kind of say to people, if you're somebody that doesn't have access to therapy because it's cost prohibitive or whatnot, I just want to say, get creative and
Mhm.
find other outlets and modalities that can look like do some searching. I know there's therapists out there that work on sliding scales. They are hard to find, but they are out there where they will base what they charge you on your income. They'll take payments, that sort of thing. For some people, check with your employer. Some companies have EAP programs, employee assistance programs, where they'll give their employees a certain number of therapy visits per year. And in fairness, usually you have to go to a certain group and you can't be as picky about who your therapist is, but it is a way to get some therapy visits.
Yeah.
Look into other creative outlets like we talked about earlier, whether it's art or journaling or meditation. There are a lot of free meditation apps out there. Find a trusted friend. And again, I know not everybody has that, but if you have somebody very, very safe that you can talk to about what's going on, there's that. Or even finding an online group, even if you have to remain anonymous, but somewhere safe that you can process with, because it's getting that stuff out in a safe place is healing. But there are ways that it can be done without paying a lot of money to an expensive therapist, although that can be an ideal situation. It's just not possible for everybody. And I recognize that.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you've been able to access therapy and that it's been so life-changing for you. But again, part of the reason it's been life-changing is because you're willing to do the work. And there is no amount of therapy out there that will work if you're not willing to do the work and dig in.
Yeah.
And that means facing the demons and looking at all the hard shit and looking at all the ugliness about what's inside of us, about what's happened to us. And it's hard. It's hard. Mm-hmm. It's worth it, but it's hard.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So where can people find you? Where are you promoting this film? If people want to know more about it, where can they go to learn more about it?
So if you're wanting to learn more about my film, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Girls Camp Film. And you can also look at our website that is in our bio of our Instagram. And on our website is our Indiegogo campaign. And on my personal Instagram, which is Saige K, which is SAIGEYK, you will find my Indiegogo campaign right in my bio. So yeah, we really can't make this without the assistance of our community, whether that be ex-Mormons or people who just see the benefit of making this movie. Maybe people from the queer community that maybe don't have religious trauma, but I feel like most queer people have religious trauma. Yeah, we really want to make this happen, and we really need the help of our community.
Yeah. Well, I like I said, I've been to your Instagram page, and I've been sort of following your posts, and it absolutely sounds like a compelling film. And I hope that you can raise the funds that you need to get it done, because it's a good story. I think people need to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being with us, and thank you for sharing your story and for opening your heart and for being vulnerable. You shared a lot of personal things that I know, like I said before, are not easy to share, but when other people hear you share those things, it does help them feel that they're not alone. It helps them understand that the things they're experiencing are normal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Latter-day Survivors. You can find us on the web at latterdaysurvivors.org. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Latter-day Survivors, and we're on Twitter at LD Survivors. As survivors of trauma and abuse, we wanted to provide a platform for survivors to share their stories. Many survivors of all types of abuse may be able to recognize and relate to the patterns of behavior in the victims, abusers, families, and friends of the stories shared by other survivors on this podcast. Often, as we escape oppressive family, religious, and social constructs to a safer place where we come to see our abuse and all related issues, we are better able to process and begin to heal. We believe that when we share our stories with others, we can also help them to heal. It can take decades for survivors to find the courage to speak about these things. If it is so hard for adults, imagine how difficult it is for a child to speak up. We hope to normalize these discussions so that children can speak to adults earlier. As adults, we must listen and recognize the severity of the abuse, its potential consequences, and the need for action to stop the abuse as early as possible. Just knowing we are not alone, that there are other people who have felt and do feel the same or have endured similar experiences in life, can remind us that we are not alone in this.
Child, I know you're hurt and you can't let go. It's not your fault and you don't deserve all the bad and the hurt. I know you tried so hard. I know you've done your part. It's not fair. You did your time. How much longer will you suffer in this life? But don't give up. Just hold on tight. It'll be alright. Your life you've tried to be a good man inside. Did everything that you thought you should. Didn't seem to do you any good. I know you've tried so hard. I know you've done your part. It's not fair. You did your time. How much longer will you suffer in this life? But don't give up. Just hold on tight. It'll be alright. Tried so hard. I know you've done your part. It's not fair. You did your time. How much longer will you suffer